Now, the singer Paloma Faith and the comedian Selene Henry are among a group of celebrities backing a new campaign aimed at countering the rise of the far right. And in that, the Daily Mirror includes reform. They're also planning street protests and against people such as Tommy Robinson. And the Together Alliance, a group of campaigners, unions and civil society groups, is urging people across the country to stand up for unity in the face of what they say are attempts to fuel division. But is this just a bunch of out-of-touch millionaires trying to tell the rest of us how to think? Well, that's the conversation. I'm joined in the studio by the political consultants Dominic Moffitt and, of course, still with GB News' senior political commentator Nigel Nelson. Dominic, let's start with you. Yesterday, we were saying Lord Hermer was joining forces with David Lammy to try and get Nigel Farage to apologise for 50-year-old allegations which he denies. And here we go today. It's the champagne socialists, the millionaires, the lovies, Selene Henry, Charlotte Church, Paloma Faith, joining forces with the unions, the TUC, the NEU. Is this going to come to anything? Or once again, is it a lot of left-wing lovies blowing hot air?
Well, I, for one, absolutely celebrate the idea of people having enough conviction in politics to go out and say something on the streets. I think that's a fantastic thing that these people care enough. This is done in the face of the largest far-right rally in the UK earlier this year with Tommy Robinson speaking, and I think that is to be applauded.
Most people on that wouldn't call themselves far-right, by the way.
Ultimately, what I would say is we saw Red Wedge in the 1980s, we saw the same campaign against Brexit, and where did they get? They got absolutely nowhere, because this isn't something that changes political views. People who already agree with you go on a march, and people who don't agree with you don't even notice it's happening.
Dominic, is there anything different about this, though, by the fact you've got the National Education Union, Britain's biggest teaching union, getting involved, the TUC? This is a calcifying, a coming together of well-funded, well-organised, expansive left-wing groups. There's a few lovies in front of it, of course, a few champagne socialists, millionaires in their own right. But this is a joined-up campaign.
I think it's a campaign against racism and the far right. And I know that you keep talking about reform being included, but if you look at the Alliance website, they're very clear that reform is not part of what they're campaining against. They're not mentioned at all.
Their friendly press are briefing reform. They're putting them. This is what
you said the Daily Mail. I don't think the Daily Mirror.
Daily Mirror. Okay. Dominic, you know how this works. They won't be nakedly open about it on their own press release, their own website. But their sympathetic media is briefing against Farage left, right, and centre. They're putting him to the same Venn diagram as all of the bogeymen of the right. That's what they do.
Boys at School with Nigel Farage said he made horrific comments 50 years ago.
He's denied them.
Well, he's denied them, but the same people say that he did make them. And I think it would be right if he did make those comments for him absolutely to apologise. Clearly he denies he made them, but I think if he did, he should apologise. It's a positive campaign to stand up against racism on the streets of the UK. I'm delighted to see it's happening. I think it's going to be there's going to be a lot more of this over the coming year, and if we see Reform doing well in May elections, which I think we would all expect them to, there will be a lot more of this conversation to come.
Hello, I'm Bev Turner. Now, it can feel like the money in our bank accounts at the moment does not keep up with the cost of living, and maybe there's a solution. I'm here today with the CEO of Tally Money, Cameron Parry. Cameron, what is Tally Money?
Well, Bev, with Tally Money, you get a current account and a debit card, but instead of pounds, you use milligrams of gold as your everyday money.
So why gold?
Gold traditionally is a great store of value. It has, on average, gone up at over 11% per annum for the last 25 years against the pound. It's tripled in value in the last decade. And in the last 2 years alone, it's increased by 50% against the pound. Banks' savings products just can't compete with that level of growth.
But this isn't just about gold. This is about a currency that you guys have created at Tally Money. Explain it to me as though I'm an idiot.
So, look, people need to be able to hold their earnings and build their savings in a money that retains its value and remains in their legal control and remains theirs to access, away from government control.
Great. You had me at not exposed to government control.
You should feel safe and happy with your money. You should have peace of mind the more money you see in your bank balance, and that's the type of thing we're trying to deliver and give people choice in the type of money they get to use every day.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Cameron. Thank you.
But is it a positive thing to accuse everybody you disagree with of being racist? It didn't work in America. It didn't work with Brexit. And as you've already said, it probably won't work this time. In fact, it might counterfire people against them.
I am very comfortable, and I think a lot of people, most people in the UK would agree that people standing and marching with Tommy Robinson are racist, yes.
You think every single person who attended that rally, and the numbers have been contested, the left-wing media downsized it, as they always do, 250,000, while there were 1 million on the Remain march. A lot of people thought there were well over 500,000 people in London on that day. You think all of them were racist?
I think that if you're somebody who sides with Tommy Robinson, a man who has repeatedly said incredibly inflammatory racist statements, you are a racist.
So you basically believe anybody who turned up on that march, the Unite the Kingdom march, you're saying they're racist?
There's a difference between joining a march because you're frustrated about certain things and standing with Tommy Robinson.
Dominic, I put it to you, you're part of the problem. You don't understand the British public at all, the same way as Lenny Henry doesn't. Totally and utterly tin-eared and out of touch. It was the same in Brexit, it's the same now, and I put it to you, the more you call people racist, the more they will turn against you.
I think that you'll see with this mass movement that's marching in March that there are a lot of people who do agree that Tommy Robinson is a racist and he is not welcome on the streets of the UK.
But to object to one person, but then to fan that out to include everybody. For example, would you say that everybody who's taken to the streets to march in favour of Palestine agrees with Hamas and agrees with gassing the Jews? Because people on those marches did say that.
That's not that's not the people who are standing up at the front of those marches. But different. They're not as closely associated with them as Tommy Robinson is.
By your reckoning, every single person on a march agrees with the person you believe to be the worst perpetrator, something you never do if it's a march for those on the left.
That isn't what I said. I explicitly said that there are people on that march who
You said everyone on that march was a racist.
No, I didn't. That is exactly what I didn't say. I said that that people who come on that march because they stand with Tommy Robinson are racist. There are people on that march who are frustrated about political issues and they are not necessarily standing there with Tommy Robinson and they are not racist.
Nigel Nelson, will this amount to anything or will it simply make people think, you know what, the entire establishment seems dead against political change and that's because their time is overdue. They need to go.
I think politics has become very polarised in this country. And you've mentioned Tommy Robinson, obviously, and the march there. There were a staggering number of people who turned out there. I don't think every one of those were racist. They may have turned out for a variety of different reasons. But however you look at it, the kind of support that Tommy Robinson gets, personally, I find concerning. What it comes down to celebrities coming out and trying to organise these things, again, it's something we've always had. Margaret Thatcher had Kenny Everett, Jeremy Corbyn had Stormzy. And so politicians tend to quite like to get a bit of celebrity endorsement. So
it doesn't work. Beyonce endorsed Hillary Clinton, Kamala Harris was endorsed by Taylor Swift. None of it works because they're out of touch. They're millionaires. They haven't got a blooming clue what the working classes think.
As far as I can see, that I think you're probably right. I don't think celebrities help. But the point I'm making is that politicians and those involved in politics do court celebrities to help them out. But because politics is polarised, you'd expect a movement like this to attract an awful lot of people when they arrange the demonstration.
Dominic Moffitt, we've seen in the past significant numbers mobilised on the pro-Palestine marches. Are you expecting this to be a big... We all know those on the left get very invigorated by the thought of a revolution, particularly in the spring. Are you thinking this is going to be a significant street presence against Reform UK?
But again, it's not a protest against Reform UK, and they've been very clear about that. But no, I do not expect there to be a significant presence on the street. I do not think it will match up to the Palestine protests that we saw earlier this year.
OK, Dominic Moffitt, always appreciate you coming out. Sincerely do. Let me shake your hand. Always part friends. Nigel Nelson, always an absolute pleasure. Thank you to you both. Now,